move my mouse around a bit. That looks great. Let's maximize that. Okay. Okay. And that'll be enough to test the local recordings. Stop that. Switch that back on.
Environment Committee meeting to order, September 28th, 2022. And first, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. And first, no late items. So we get a motion for the adoption of the agenda. So moved by Councillor Bonner, seconded by Jerome. All in favor and adopted. Now the adoption of the minutes for the July 27th meeting. Moved by Councillor Bonner and Lisa. All in favor? Minutes
Aye.
adopted. And that brings us to number 5, the review of the Environment Committee's work and accomplishments, to be introduced by illustrious Ms. Paulson.
Wow,
Lisa.
I get to be illustrious today.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. As this is our last meeting with you prior to council's election, staff, Dave Stewart and Tim Pan have prepared a presentation that Dave's going to give, outlining what the Environment Committee has done since 2019. And so I won't go through, he's going to start that presentation. Dave also has a couple questions for you. And it has been pointed out to me that we have in this room real prizes for virtual people. So to lighten this up and make it a bit of fun, we will have some way of getting these prizes to you. But let's see how you do with the first 2 questions that Dave puts to you. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Lisa, and through the chair. So I'm just going to share the slideshow here, if that's okay. And just bear with me with the technology for a very short time here. So I'm hoping everyone's looking at a introductory slide and nothing else. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So yeah, so I mean, another way to title this presentation would be the Environment Committee, a retrospective. I feel like Green Day's Time of Your Life or something should be playing in the background here. Because really what we're doing is we just thought it would be kind of fun and appropriate to look back on some of the work this committee's done over the last 4 years since your adoption, or 3.5 years. So I thought we'd look through that. And rather than just read some slides to you, I thought we'd start. Oops. I'm already out of sorts here. So like Ms. Paulson mentioned, we thought we'd start with just quizzing those members that have been here for a while on some of your accomplishments to date, and just a little bit of background on the committee. So just for fun, and as we've heard, there are real prizes available. I thought I'd start with a trivia question. So I'm curious, and just shout it out here if it's okay with the chair, or breaking Robert's rules a little bit here. When did the Environment Committee have their first meeting? So either virtual hands or shout out the answer. Anyone's?
October.
I hear October. Anybody have a different opinion? That's good, because it was in fact October of 2019.
Hey!
There you go. And I think that's Lindsay who got that.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Lindsay gets the choice of a City of Nanaimo Cycle Nanaimo t-shirt, a green Reimagine t-shirt, or a rainbow Reimagine t-shirt. So pick your prize.
The first one.
Okay. This
Hey.
is Lindsay. Thank you.
Excellent. Congratulations. All right. We have one more of these before we get into the presentation itself. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the topics that were covered by the committee. And if anyone's reading ahead, the answer is on the slide here. Which of the following topics were not discussed at the Environment Committee since 2019? So I'm
D.
I hear C. Anybody have a different?
D.
D it was.
D. Okay, good. Because that D is in fact the correct answer. Yeah, so the adaptable and accessible housing policy did not go to the Environment Committee, probably for obvious reasons. That did get reviewed by the Accessibility and Inclusiveness Committee, however. So that is a real policy that's in the works, and everything else here, plus many, many others, were reviewed by the committee. So sorry, that was Lisa Frey. I think you got that one right. Okay.
Okay, so Lisa, would you like a green Reimagine t-shirt or a rainbow Reimagine t-shirt?
I'll take the rainbow Reimagine t-shirt. Thank you.
Ooh.
And do not despair, the rest of you get a runners-up or prize at the end of all of this.
Everyone's a winner. All right. All right, so that's it for the review questions, and we'll just jump in here. So this has got a lot of text. I'm not planning on reading it to everyone, but just a bit of a background on the committee. So as we heard already, the committee first meeting was held in October of 2019. We've had approximately 16 meetings to date. Could be actually 17 because I think I forgot to count one of the special meetings. And they've covered 15 plus environmental projects. And please, if I'm missing something, which is very possible, let me know. I'm not going to read all these projects to you, but I do want to kind of highlight just the diversity of these projects. We're looking at projects related to the natural environment, a number of projects related to climate change and both mitigation and adaptation, including the resiliency policy. On the adaptation side, we're looking at corporate policies as well as more community-wide based policies, right from engagement strategies to city policy and actual bylaws in some cases here. So real diversity of projects. The ones that are highlighted in green are kind of some more recent projects that we did want to provide a bit of an update and speak to a little bit more as well. And I think some kind of the highlight projects in some cases as well. Anything missing on this through the chairs? No.
I think that's pretty
Yeah.
extensive.
Yeah, I think it's well done. So, I mean, the first and probably the biggest project that this committee and all other committees have dealt with in the last 2 years has been Reimagine Nanaimo, now adopted as city plan as of July. So, I mean, we've spoken about this with this committee 6 separate times within both 2021 and 2022. You've received a presentation on indicators. Greenhouse gas emissions were discussed twice. Green policy 3 separate times, as well as the overall Reimagine goal. You've also made 18 different motions that help guide this policy. So, yeah, hopefully every member of this committee can take ownership of this plan because you certainly were involved in it. And kind of related to that, the Donut Economic Framework, which we have discussed at this committee, I believe it was brought to this committee actually by Councillor Breslak himself.
Councillor Brown.
Oh, pardon me. I credit to Councillor Brown as well. Then. Yeah. Who brought this committee, and it was brought to the committee, and certainly created a framework there for our work going forward, both for Reimagine Nanaimo and other city policies as we go forward. So just really wanted to highlight that because I think it's going to be a huge piece of our future. And again, it really did start largely with this committee and with the work of Councillor Brown and others. The other one is Development Permit Area 1 and 3, and this one does include a bit of an update as well. So you heard from our Environmental Protection Officer, Kevin Bridges, a couple of times on this topic, largely regarding the protection of water courses and how that's done, as well as the draft development permit regulations. So those were adopted at the same time as city plan into both the zoning bylaw and into city plan itself. And what we did is we actually consolidated some of our development permit area regulations that were in 2 different development permit areas, one for fish-bearing water courses, one for all other ESAs, into a single development permit area, ESA 1, which deals with both terrestrial, marine and water courses and riparian areas. We also added a new development permit area as a result of the climate resiliency study and the sea level rise study directly dealing with sea level rise. And that was based again on the work of the sea level rise study and a recommendation of the climate resiliency study. That was brought forward to the committee as well. We've also met with this group a couple of different times to brainstorm and talk about community engagement. So over the summer, myself and a co-op student went out to the night market. Some of you might have seen us there or heard, because our co-op student was quite energetic. And so we actually had quite a bit of engagement regarding largely heat pumps, as well as we played some environmental trivia games with families, and to really just get people talking about, environmental issues. We also ran the Cool It program, which is again, just as a reminder to the group, that's the program where we partnered with the BC Sustainable Energy Association and went into different classrooms to really engage them on largely climate mitigation and climate change issues. We spoke to 13 classes. You can see the stats there. And again, we're looking to go back and finish that or continue that program, in the fall. We're looking at high school groups as well to engage in that. These 13 classes were all in elementary in the last school year. We're also working towards the Agents of Change program, which is a program partnering with ICLEI Canada, where we're looking to basically develop a volunteer engagement program from scratch. That program is set to launch in October. You see on the slide there, we have a tentative name, but I want to hear feedback from this group on that. So we'll get to that in 1 second, about 2 slides from now here. But yeah, we're looking at, basically what we're looking at there is an engagement project where we're basically looking at existing groups and providing some environmental projects that they can take on, and encouraging existing groups and organizations to have an environmental lens, and rewarding them and recognizing them for environmental acts. So they'd be getting little action or badges for various set environmental acts, and recognizing the climate change on their websites and other areas. We also have some upcoming and past events. The first one actually is now a past event since I've created the slide. So last weekend was Rivers Day. Park staff was out. We launched which we'll talk about in a later slide, but we also had an opportunity to speak to our community watershed restoration grant at that event as well. Bike Film Festival this weekend. If anyone's looking for something to do this Saturday, there is a bike film festival at VIU. And we're working, and we'll be setting up a demo tent and partnering with Moto Car Share to demo some electric vehicles at that event as well. Starting the EV event and the booth will start at 4:30, and then the film festival itself starts at 7. And that's also a kickoff to the fall Go By Bike Week events that are going to be happening from the 13th to 16th of October. And then we have a number of other events coming up. I've highlighted a couple of keys. Obviously, the big Earth Day event we do every year, and we're looking at adding a new event led by my departments in sustainability in June to coincide with Canada Environment Week as well. So we're looking at adding an event calendar for a number of other events that aren't on here, but they're certainly basically trying to get out on the community a bit more. So I'm going to circle back a little bit here, just the way the slides worked out. But I mentioned that Agents of Change program. So what that is, again, is that's a program where we're collaboratively with the regional district and NIMO to create a volunteer engagement community really regarding climate mitigation. So part of an education piece as well as an action-oriented program. And what we've developed is kind of a brochure or kind of guidelines for groups and existing organizations to really include a climate lens in their policies. So we have set actions that they'd be awarded for doing those. And what we're looking for is we've thrown around a lot of names in the last 2 months internally. So I'm curious what this group thinks. I'll be honest, we're kind of leading towards the first one there, the Acting for Climate Together. But we're looking at kind of change-oriented names. So given the expertise in this group, in particular, Lindsay's expertise and Lisa's as well, and Jerome's and the rest of the committee here, I can't see who's in there in the services and councils, but I'm curious if anybody has any comments or feedback on some of these name ideas. So I'm going to pause here for a second, if it's all right with the chair, and see if there's any comments on that.
Yeah, if you have any comments, raise your hand. I'd be interested to hear from everybody on what jumps out at you for the name.
I like B, especially with the 4 in the middle, although that sounds kind of like a chemical, like a volatile organic compound or something. But ironically, but I mean, acting for climate together is good too. I mean, if you went with that, that's fine. But I kind of like B. I don't know.
Thanks. No, I certainly, yeah, with your expertise, evaluate your opinion a ton on this, because really this is a behavior type change program. Yeah, we are kind of debating B as well. We were originally going to partner with another group that had a very similar name. They've changed their name now. So yeah.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. Yeah, so that's definitely an option. Thanks. Anybody else? Yeah. Sorry, through the chair, Lisa, if that's okay.
Yeah, I can't see everybody.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you could see.
Just pipe in. If things get too unruly, I'll start coordinating, but you can just turn your thing on and speak.
I like the name, the Acting for Climate Together, but I'm thinking that the acronym like ACT is very commonly like used, or I wonder if you see it in other places too, it's similar. But I like B as well. So I like the name in A, but I like that B has sort of a different like acronym or symbol at the end.
Thanks.
Donald, Jerome?
I don't know. I think A and B are fine. I'm not thrilled about acting. I'd rather see action for climate rather than acting, because then the undertone is just sort of putting on an act. So I'd rather see something like action or something along those lines. But really, it all comes down to what they actually do. So at some point, call it whatever. It's really going to be on the business end of what actually gets done and what the actions are going to be with that group. That I think so. Yeah, call it something interesting. But I'm kind of curious more about what exactly that's going to be doing.
My wife made it very clear to me that I wasn't allowed to name our children because I'm not very good at it. But Communities for Climate Change is CCC. Not that we want to change the climate, but I know I like sort of B, Communities for Climate. But when you hear that, generally you want to stick in change after the end of it.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm kind of a toss up between A and B, almost even Communities for Climate Action, and then it could be CCA. It kind of takes out the chemical compound aspect and puts the word action in there. I think, yeah, A and B would be good. I kind of like cool communities, and I don't know if it'd be appropriate for this, but it just reminds me of when I was like in second year university. There was like a big critical mass, and there was this guy on a bicycle dressed up as a dinosaur, and he was the Fossilosaurus, and he rode down the middle of Vancouver yelling, "Ride your bike for a cool planet," and but I don't think it fully captures the cool community. So I go A or B, and maybe looking at Communities for Climate Action. Any more comments?
I think B is fine.
Trying to get everybody on the screen, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, no worries. Seeing none, is there any staff comments on the names?
I guess my one comment is, I think Lisa's correct, ACT is also used for social planning and
And the ACT team,
health,
yeah.
ACT teams, yeah. That would be my one comment.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you. That was really valuable. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll circle back once we have a bit more. Just to maybe quickly address Jerome's comment on, so we were looking at creating a brochure that's going to have a number of sort of general actions just to give you an idea of what some of those actions would be. So they'd be earning different badges in different categories. So there'd be a category for their general action badge, which will be looking at doing a climate project. So that could be anything from really looking on more at the natural environment or at adaptation side here rather than mitigation, but looking at the climate restoration project. We're also looking more on the mitigation side There'd be a transportation badge where they could get various points. For example, one of them would be create a Go By Bike team, or host a meeting where folks are challenged to travel sustainably and award prizes for the person who kind of comes up with the most creative sustainable transportation trip, or travels the furthest sustainably. Or look at group heat pump purchases on the building side of things, or host a meeting where you bring in a certified energy advisor or somebody who's experienced a recent home energy upgrade. So really, it's just basically similar to some other programs you may have seen for individuals, but trying to take advantage of kind of a group mentality there, where and build on the existing capacity of groups where they can bring in their members is sort of the really intent of this, and really create that conversation about sustainable behavior within existing groups that maybe aren't necessarily focused that way generally. So that could be a neighborhood association, a school group, or or an existing nonprofit. So moving on from that, unless there are questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, another project that we are looking at actively right now is the Community Watershed Restoration Grant, which is just actually launched a couple of weeks ago on September 9th, so 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's just a reminder to the group, that's a $20,000 grant used to support community watershed restoration projects. So again, really supporting community capacity, in this case, really more on natural environment protection and restoration. The community did review the guidelines for this. And again, and this project the grant application will close on October 17th, looking to award the grant in early 2023, looking at going to the Finance and Audit Committee in December of this year. So that's active, and please help spread the word on that, because we're hoping to get quite a number of applications in here, and looking really forward to reviewing them. So that's kind of it in terms of what we had for you today. I know some people have to run here, but I just, this is also maybe a chance here. I'm going to pass it back to the chair here, but a chance to follow up on past activities and really what happened, and what if there's anything I missed here, or any ideas on what you'd like to see going forward here, depending on what happens post October 15th.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Is there any questions or comments from the committee? Jerome.
Just a curiosity question. I'm wondering what's happening with the waterfront project, because when we saw it, I guess it's like a year and a half or 2 years ago, there was a real rush to get this thing sort of get a bit of a stamp of approval from this committee, but then it's been radio silent. So I'm wondering what the status of it is, if it's still even a viable thing.
Good question, Jerome. Any comments?
Okay, well, I'm not perhaps the best equipped to answer this, but what I do understand is where things are at I'm not sure how much was presented to you, but it's a very complex process. So never mind all the approvals that are needed. There are conversations we need to have with Snuneymuxw First Nation, as well as various ministries. I think the last time this committee saw the design, it was the reworked one using a Green Shores approach,
Yeah.
if I'm correct. So that's still as it stands. However, the big pieces are that this requires a significant amount of investment from council to move forward on in terms of the costs. And so the driving force would be, is this the right time for council to make that decision? I think Councillor Gaspar, you can maybe speak to the last time this came before council. And then with that, the next steps that have to take place, which are the complexities of navigating archaeological and environmental and other kind of cultural concerns. And I think that's as much as I know right now without
I know a little bit
Yeah.
more. I know that it's been to council, and council has given staff the direction to proceed forward with this. So bringing you the next steps of all of the things that Lisa just talked about that need to be done and accomplished, all of those steps need to be taken, as well as figuring out a way to cost the project. So there is around the processes and how the city will pay for the project going forward. But it is a priority that council has given us, one of the capital projects council has given us to move forward on, direction to move forward on. But it is very complex, like Lisa was mentioning.
So the issue that had arisen at some point of property and property ownership down to the areas, that's been solved, or is that one of those big issues still?
It's still a big issue through the chair.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah, this
Thank you.
is a long-term priority, and I think through the chair, through the city plan feedback, we consistently got strong feedback in support of the waterfront walkway. So we know it continues to be higher on the radar of the community, and that's been reinforced several times, including most recently through city plans. So.
Great. Any other comments on that?
I think Lindsay.
Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, just two things under the what's next thing. I just wanted to let you know that Ting might report on it, but the Cool It program has been really good, and I finally got approval from the school board to do the survey that we're doing after the Take Home Challenge happens about parents and caregivers' sustainable behaviors in the household post program. So when I get the data analyzed and write the report and everything, maybe I can come and give a verbal report of that study to you guys, because our terms are up in December, right? Is that true?
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So will there be another meeting, or I guess we don't know?
Yeah, I think after this little section, we'll have a little bit of discussion of sort of what feedback, following up on what we started talking about last meeting, and then, I think that after this next council comes in, there's going to be a discussion on committees and how things are going to be organized and set up, and that will determine exactly what the next course of action is. So, so yeah, it's going to be a transition period after this committee meeting to whatever is decided next. So this is a bit of a culmination of our time together to a certain degree.
Okay, sounds good.
Any other comments? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, for the election, I went through and just looked at all the stuff that was accomplished through the committee, and yeah, there's a pretty sizable list, and I've got to say for myself, it's been really nice having this committee. I think that we've actually through this committee brought a lot of innovative things forward to council, and we're able to really push for an acceleration or an expansion of what we've done in the past, and I think that is really something to be proud of, and I think it does allow for the next council to come into a pretty strong policy base for some stronger climate and environmental protection actions to ease the way for even more work. So thanks Dave for that presentation and for all the committee members' work.
Thank you, Councillor.
Did any other comments from staff or the committee members before we move on to the next section? Not seeing any. So this brings us to item 7, which is just feedback on future committee operations, and basically this is just a little moment here to continue on our discussion from last committee discussing, what the future of this committee could look like, what could make it more effective, what things you appreciated about it so far, and what you'd like to see going forward. And this allows for staff and whoever the next council is going forward to bring some ideas from experience about the next formation of how we're going to move forward the environmental policies in the city. So, any comments from the committee? Don.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that I think the committee worked fairly well. I mean, we looking at the amount of work that the committee has done and recommendations to council and recommendations that council has picked up on and incorporated into, as an example, the city plan. I think whatever we did in the past worked. Going forward, it looks like it's at some point it's not broken. So is the makeup similar to what we want to do? I'm going to guesstimate what's going to happen in the future is that we're going to be probably council is probably going to be actioning the plans of the city plan, of which there's a great big chunk of it has to do with the environment. And I would think that many of the suggestions coming forward, even if they're generated by staff or by this committee, would flow through this committee to council. So I think there's a fair amount of work to be done in the near future. We probably would want more people on the committee to have a much of a broader sense or after input from the public, sort of thing. That's just me. That's where I think we would be going if after the next election, unless I'm wrong.
No, those are some good points, Don. Any comments on what Don had to say, or other items? Lisa, Lindsay, Jerome.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I'll just follow up what Councillor Bonner said. My feeling is that the last time we saw the documents before they were approved, there were the pile of potential actions that were listed was enormous, and it needed like serious thought and categorization and priorities established. And so I would think that what I'd like to see, I suppose, is that whatever the next iteration of this committee looks like, it would be good if there was a directive from whatever the council or whoever is on council to wade through that big pile and start like creating priorities. There are some actions that were listed that are either redundant or easy to tackle and are not particularly hard things to do, but there was many in there that were substantial chunks of work that required a lot of thought and discussion in terms of how they would be articulated across this particular plan and all the others in the Reimagine process. And so I think it would be beneficial if early on there was kind of a clear mandate to say, in the first 6 months, there has to be a bit of a hierarchy or a list of priorities established in terms of what the actions might look like, because otherwise there's a risk that the tough ones don't get done and the tough ones don't get articulated. And the tough ones are the ones that are, if I remember enough about what the actions were, the difficult ones are the ones that potentially have the greatest impact and are the longest lived, which is what makes them hard to do and work on. But the effort should be there in my mind. So it would be kind of a strategic approach to trying to deal with some of the actions, because as we've heard on the committee before, there are some actions in the plan, and many of them that are not radically different from things that are already being done. They just need to find their spot or their place in the list. But there are others that are newer ones that have not really been done or not done the same way, that need some thought and some kind of strategic planning around them. So that's my thought on that.
Great, thanks, Jerome. Lisa?
Hi, sorry. I'm not really sure. I've been thinking about this a bit. I feel like at times that I wish that I could have contributed more. And so maybe some of the topics for me were a bit technical. And I'm not really sure if in the future you're looking at the composition of the committee and just sort of that selection. I suppose if you're looking for sort of a well-roundedness, I feel like sometimes the focus of our topics were quite technical and a little out of my wheelhouse, to be honest. Coming into the committee, I obviously have that experience in the education piece and the approach. And I think there were certain times where I felt I could be more helpful than others. I remember when we were having conversations about planning for I think it was a city event or Earth Day event. And I remember feeling like that was a really good place where I could contribute and bring my skills and my connections and whatnot to the plate. And then other times I felt like it was hard to feel like I was making a meaningful contribution. And I feel like I really do appreciate Jerome. He's obviously got like a lot of knowledge, and I felt that there was a lot of learning for me. And I have to appreciate as well the staff and how much effort they made, especially in the beginning, to really get us all feeling like we were in a really good place around understanding how decisions are made and what things are taken into consideration around all the systems that we were talking about. So just want to commend you for the amount of effort I think it took for, the wide variety of people that were at the committee. And I guess, and maybe this isn't a criticism, but just a wonder, is that there were a lot of people at the beginning, and it feels like we've dropped off to sort of the core few. And I don't know, what reasoning, or if it's just other people's commitments, but I think it's been a bit harder when there's maybe less of that well-rounded group that's present during our meetings. Anyway, those are my 2 bits.
Great, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, I would second what Lisa said too. I mean, I can contribute so far as the psychosocial or the human dimensions of, sustainability or climate change, and just drawing everyone's attention back to human attitudes and behaviors. And I find that, I feel satisfied in having done that. And then some of the research that's come to me out of it. And at the beginning, I think Rob Lawrence and I had sort of a subcommittee going on something, and I had a few meetings. Like I felt like I contributed, but I think it's true too that a lot of this is engineering and land use planning and landscaping and parks and stuff, and so it's tough to sort of engage everyone all the time. But yeah, being strategic about who you ask to be on the committee. Like if you you want a group of people to advise you in certain areas, look for those people. Maybe don't cast the net so wide, but be strategic in who you want on the committee, I guess, from the public realm.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Just some comments from what I'm hearing. Just starting with Dawn. Like I think this next iteration is that there was a lot of higher level policy work that was done by this committee, providing feedback on the larger goals and high level policies in the city plan. And the next chunk is really more detailed of how we're going to action those policies and what specific programs and initiatives that we're going to put in place to reach those goals. And a lot of that work is figuring out the prioritization of the different initiatives, and then there's a lot more technical work involved as well, and also too, I think that this committee or some form of environment committee can provide review of how we're the city and staff are looking at the prioritization and what to do, and provide accountability on progress on those different projects to check in, where are we at with the waterfront walkway, and as we've got a more detailed action plan that's going to try to achieve interim goals and that, to be able to provide that oversight or overview of where we're at. I think that's one function that the committee can play. And then I think too, with some of the and you know, as we go through the different aspects of the action plan, it's going to draw in different staff and different you know, folks in different departments that to just speak to, you know, the initial start of this committee when we first started off, there was a few more people, and you know, we did have different folks as we went through the different aspects of the plan, the official community plan come in, like, you know, Bill Sims and people from engineering and that. But I think that some of these programs are going to require a little bit more feedback on how to present and how to interact with the community on them. And I think that's really useful sometimes where you don't want a technical expert in that specific policy area, but you more want somebody from the community that's got some knowledge to have a look at, like, how is this going to fly and how are people in the community going to understand? You know, Lindsay, with your work and that, I think that's a really useful addition. And so I don't know exactly how we could set up a committee, or, you know, how frequently they meet, or maybe there is, you know, different types of committees that can, one, play that more technical accountability role that the committee could play in terms of reviewing the actions, and then also the role of just getting feedback from the general public in terms, or not general public, but a focus group of how will these different programs, initiatives, especially the ones that are going to be really directly involved with the public, or rollout of rebate programs or school programs or education programs, to get that feedback on how they can be more effective. And so I think those are two things in my mind that, you know, I'm going to be thinking through as we look at how this committee is structured in the future. And I think these committees as well, this committee served a real strong function of just initiating different actions and policy movements as well. And that's another important role that the committee can play going forward as well. So, Jerome?
Just a couple thoughts. Am I muted? No. Actually, I was going to say things that you just said in front. One of the thoughts I had, going back to the beginning, is that this was your committee. So really, like, you're asking us what we think, but it's really what you think. I mean, this was your brainchild, and so clearly you must have had a purpose in mind when you set it up. And so for the next iteration, I guess maybe that's a good starting point, is what do you feel, if you're, I'm assuming, or whoever decides to carry this committee on, if that's the case, what's the purpose that they feel is needed? A couple of things, you know, one of the first things we said probably in the second or third meeting, 2 years or 3 years, whatever it was, is that we wanted to measure things. I think when we got, and just to echo what Lisa said, many of us, I think, got into this committee thinking that we were going to be dealing with actions, only to realize that the actions weren't even close to be, I mean, there were things happening, but they didn't fit into a broader picture, which is what we've finally sort of arrived at, is a broader framework where the actions will fit into. So in many ways, you know, what we did as a committee, or what we expected to do as a committee, is actually just now coming to fruition. And I would agree that there are many meetings that we spent hearing about initiatives and actions, but really our input was somewhat inconsequential, because there were just really sort of procedures happening at the city, which is good to know that they occur, but it doesn't really require formal input for this committee. So, you know, do we need monthly meetings? I don't know. Maybe it's much more of a targeted focus group kind of approach, as you said. And then when we started this conversation in the previous meeting, you know, one of the thoughts and one of the discussions we had is that really, because the plan is meant to be integrated, I think the meeting should be integrated as well, or at least the crossover between the 5 or 6 major goals of the plan. There should be collaboration of representatives from these committees to craft policies that are integrated. So as opposed to keeping them separate, there's a committee meeting dealing with sustainability and climate change, aspects that relate to housing, aspects that relate to public health, aspects that relate to whatever they might be, economic growth, those discussions should happen with all those other interested parties. And that would really, like, in the process of developing meaningful action, those would be that much more meaningful if they've been developed with that perspective from the start, rather than trying to patch them together later, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of this work in the creation of the city plan was try to build a larger framework that expresses a vision and a set of goals of what we're trying to achieve, and then building from that, you know, a very coherent approach of, you know, the policies and actions that are meeting those larger goals. And I think that the committee structures need to reflect that intention of integration and coherence. And so there's probably a lot of interesting ways of how to set that up and accomplish that. And I think that that is where some discussion is going to need to be had by the upcoming council. And there's some interesting models out there, and I think ultimately what I personally am going for is one that, you know, it feels very useful everybody's time when they're coming to these meetings, and that it feels effective and productive, and we're not meeting more than we need to meet, and that it feels like we're working towards these larger objectives, and providing that valuable input to achieve them. And I think that yeah, there's opportunity there to come up with something that feels right.
I mean, one option, if I can continue, I don't want to take all the time, but one option would be that in the first 6 or 8 months, each committee, or maybe not all committees go through this, but the Environment Committee goes through the list of actions that were already in the draft versions and goes through these a bit, tries to order them, or, you know, sort of create a bit of a hierarchy of the ones that are already being done and are kind of easy to do, identify the ones that are trickier and more involved. And then future meetings basically occur with members of each, or representatives of each aspect of the parts of the plan. So there's somebody from the housing task force, or whatever that part is, and forgive me for not knowing who at the city and in terms of staff deals with this, but the representative person from that department. And you don't have a committee for the Environment Committee, you have a group of people that try to articulate all the actions that speak to the issue of, right? And so then you've got the same people in the same room around the same topic, rather than being divided by you know, a committee member, or a housing person, or a committee environmental person. So maybe there's no real need for monthly meetings. Maybe there are strategic opportunities to sort of bring the heads together around a certain topic, and then you hash it out from the perspective of every part of the plan.
So some good thoughts. That's definitely some good food for thought. Any other comments? Okay. Well, that kind of brings us to the end. I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the committee members, Jerome, Lisa, Lindsay, and Dawn, and I think that's everybody that's here today, and for all the other members that, you know, did participate throughout, and also yeah, to all our staff, Lisa, Jeremy, Ting, and then Sheila and Callista, who have all been supporting, you know, this process going forward. Oh, I'm not here anymore.
Dave.
Dave. Oh,
Stuart.
sorry, Dave. You've got your screen off there. And yeah, a lot of work has been accomplished, and yeah, I think we can be proud of the work done so far. And we've set some ambitious targets and policies, so it really is going to come down to, you know, resourcing it appropriately and keep pushing for these things to make movement on them. So I don't know if there's any final words from folks, and yeah, any final words? Don?
Well, I would, this happened before I was on the committee, but I just wanted to thank all the members for the work that they did and the recommendations they made to council on the donut economy. That will be part of our city plan for the next 20 years. And I think that alone puts this committee far ahead of any others that I've seen. And all the time I've been working with the city in terms of its influence on where this city is going. So thank you very much for all of that. And I don't think we could have done it without you. Tyler pushed it a lot too, but definitely not you guys either.
We have Lisa has passed some door prizes for me. I'm picking 2 names for 2 door prizes. So I'm going to pick right now, and the door prizes will get to you somehow. Do they have to be here?
No.
Oh, they don't have to be here. Okay. Okay. So we're going to. So one is Elise, who wasn't able to make it today, and the second name is Lindsay. So you've received a door prize.
Hey.
And maybe Lisa will tell us what they are.
Okay, so Lindsay, you get a choice, and this one was actually picked with Jerome in mind, because it's a tape measure, measuring progress. So tape measure, or you can have City of Nanaimo Partnership T-shirt, which is our work with Nanaimo First Nation. And on Friday, we're holding a big event that hopefully some of you will come to. And this is part of our partnership with Nanaimo, the school district. So if you give me your size, I think this one's medium, this is available. So you pick which one you want, Lisa, and Elise will get the other one.
I will have the T-shirt.
Okay.
As small as you can go.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. And I too, I don't know if we really got to acknowledge, but you know, Rob Lawrence that you know, sadly passed away while just after he retired, was, you know, big part of this committee and in the city's environmental section for quite some time, and yeah, just grateful for his contributions. And I think he'd be very happy to see how, you know, this section has grown and sort of what the vision and the plans that have been laid forward to pursue. So yeah, thanks, Rob. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end. So yeah, big thanks everyone, and we'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Don, second by Jerome. All right, have a lovely rest of your evening, everybody.